Welcome, everybody, to the Remembering Akron podcast. I'm your host, Derek Maxfield. Today, my guest is Peter Forrestal of Akron. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
It's good to have you. So let's start off by talking a little bit about you. You were born in 1952. That's about the time of the Korean War.
Yeah, the Korean War was just ending. I didn't know anybody in town that was an active member in that war, but through later in life got to know a lot of folks that were active in both the Vietnam War, which was a little bit in front of me time-wise because I was in college, and of course lots of World War II service members, including my father was in the Navy just at the end of World War II.
Okay, we'll come back and pick up the story of your father's service in a few minutes. So you grew up in Akron then and went to school here?
Yep, graduated from Akron High School in 1970.
At that time, was it all in one building, or was Akron High School a separate building?
No, the high school was a separate building, separate from the elementary school, which was new when I was a kid. But the middle school in between the two was built when I was in 8th grade. And so we had actually half-day classes for a year while they were doing that construction.
Half-day classes, you must have enjoyed that.
Oh, we thought it was great. My sister, one of my sisters is a year younger than I am, and she was in 7th grade and I was in 8th, and we had half-day classes, and we thought it was just terrific.
Wonderful. So when you were in high school, did you have any fond memories?
Yeah, virtually all the members of my family, I'm one of 11, have 5 brothers and 5 sisters.
Oh, my goodness.
And all the boys, the older 5 anyway, and a couple of the girls swam on the swim team. And so we had multiple of us on the team at any given point in time. So that was a lot of fun. And we had a reasonable amount of success, and one of my brothers was really, really good as a swimmer, and so it was a fun thing, and we all got to know the community kind of through that too. It was fun. And I ran cross country 2 years and played tennis, just goofing off for a year. And
all right. Sometimes it's good to goof off. You got to learn what you like and what you're good at.
Well, I was a terrible tennis player. I was not good.
Sounds like me. Well, it sounds like you had a good time in school. You had an interesting time in college. You have a bachelor's degree in zoology, I understand?
I went to University of Michigan.
Good school.
Which is where my parents went. I had an older brother there at the time. My parents went, and both of my dad's parents attended, although not concurrently. Grandpa graduated in 1908, and Grandma graduated in 1913, so their times there did not overlap. They met here in Western New York.
My goodness. So a family that is from the Akron area all went to the University of Michigan. Why did they make that choice?
That was because my grandfather had relatives that worked for the railroad, got him a job on the railroad, and by being an employee, you could travel on the trains for free. And then he received a recommendation that University of Michigan was a good place to go to college. He grew up in Buffalo, my grandfather did, and it was recommended to him that he look at Michigan for engineering, and he went there. And then when he got back in town a few years, then subsequently met my grandmother after she had graduated.
My goodness. And subsequently the entire family went there.
Yeah, 7 of my siblings attended for either undergraduate school, part thereof, or for grad school.
I see that you have 2 children. Did any of them end up going to the University of Michigan?
No, one's UB and the other's Cornell.
Okay, well, those are good schools too.
Yes.
Why zoology?
I liked the sciences, and I was on a pre-med track, and so you had to pick one of those science programs for your major.
I see.
And zoology was pretty interesting to me, and so that's the one I picked.
Well, you must have enjoyed it because you got a master's degree from there as well.
I wanted a plan B for life, and so I got a master's because you needed to have one if you're going to be a teacher. I was trying to get into med school at the time, and for a plan B, I was not successful in getting into med school. It was close. I got some interviews, but plan B was to get a master's degree. And there were a number of courses that I wanted to take that were of interest to me in the science area. So I went back and went a 5th year and got a master's degree.
Okay. Well, you must have liked it. You stayed a long time.
Yep. And I had a sister that was 1 year behind me there, so she was there her whole 4 years. While I was there.
Oh, well, it must have been reassuring to her to have the older brother nearby.
Well, we look a lot alike, despite the gender difference. And she had a number of people on campus go up to her and say, "Do you have a brother here?" That didn't know me.
And Michigan's a huge school.
Yeah, 30,000 kids at the time.
Oh, my goodness.
And yeah, that happened a dozen times to her, where people would come up and know that she was my sister.
Now, was she in zoology too?
No, she was, I think she was a math, because she's a math teacher now.
All right.
And I think she was in a math major.
All right. Interesting. So you came back to Akron. And I take it the zoology is not what you went back into when you graduated.
No. My family has a highway construction firm that my grandfather founded in 1911. And so summers after high school and during college, I worked for Cold Spring Construction on various highway projects here in Western New York. And then when I graduated, I worked for 2 more years. So full season plus, during the winter, all but the worst of the winter, and then went to work for the Bank of Akron, and worked there 41 years.
41 years. That's pretty remarkable. And you rose up to the rank of president of the bank.
Mm-hmm. Started in bookkeeping, and then I learned to be a teller, and then I did some lending, and did some accounting, and did some auditing, and then some more lending, and then after about 10 years, then the manager of the bank retired, so then I was promoted, and then I was running the bank. I took some banking education courses and programs along the way, of course.
I see. Well, you rang all the way up the ladder.
Yep, I did almost every job.
That is pretty impressive. In a small town, you got to wear a lot of hats, I understand.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So you have any great memories from your years with the banks?
Oh, yeah. The people in the town that you get to know so well. One of the joys of my career was the fact that I got to know so many people that had lived a long time. Mm-hmm. And so I had the benefit of knowing a number of people that were still productive and alert individuals well into their 90s. And so there's always a crop of 90-somethings here in Akron that are alert and vibrant members of the community, and I've known so many of them because I've been in that position so long where I got to know them all. That's been really fun.
How wonderful. Do you have any particular memories of an individual that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I knew of a guy I knew a guy over in Clarence Center who we cut down a big tree over there in our branch there, Bob Fogelsonger. And at age 94, he was out splitting firewood, hauling great big chunks of firewood, chainsaw work with another guy, but doing the physical labor himself. It was just unbelievable.
At 94.
What a physical specimen.
That guy was rugged. Remarkable.
and even today, Dick Rudolph is 94, and he's alert and sharp, and so is his wife, Jean. And just to know people like that is just such a joy.
I'll bet.
The bank's been successful. We've grown, and we've built some branches, and it's been small town banking's a fun thing.
Yeah.
You get to know a lot of nice people.
Nice. So how long was it after you came back to Akron that you got married?
2 years after college. So while I was working highway construction, I met Linda, who lived here locally but didn't grow up here. Her family had moved out here a few years earlier. Her father was a Buffalo firefighter.
I see.
And they'd moved here, and I met her on Crittenden Road, which is where she lived. I met her next door, just by chance.
By chance.
And here we are 40 years later.
Wonderful.
2 kids, 4 grandkids.
All these years later. Marriage is an interesting institution these days, and you don't see 50-year marriages as much anymore as you used to.
I think you probably see more in small towns, just guessing.
Yeah.
But it's the statistics are a little disconcerting.
Yeah, I think they are. So let's talk a little bit about some other things that you have done here. You have affiliations with the Lions Club for almost 40 years.
One of the old guys at work, Bill Smith, got me into Lions Club when I'd only been at the bank a few years. So I started in 76, so it had to be about 1980. I'm not really sure what year, but I've been in Lions Club ever since, was the president at one point, and been on the board a lot of years. And that's been a really rewarding and enjoyable adventure to have. And our club has done a lot of good in our community, including the playgrounds here in Russell Park and the bandstand pavilion that we built. And so we kind of take those things under our wings, and we maintain them as well.
Wonderful. And you've also been a member of the Rotary.
Rotary Club we founded the Rotary Club 30 years ago. Just had our 30th anniversary.
Wonderful.
And same thing in terms of community service projects. Good people, and made a lot of friends along the way, and it's fun.
There tends to be a lot of crossbreeding between those little organizations.
Oh, there is.
Small towns.
There
Many
is.
of the same members are involved.
In the beginning, they didn't want you to be a member. The Rotary Club didn't want you to be a member of any other service club, but we quickly cured them of that because there were so many of us that were in both, and a handful of us still are.
Wonderful. And I see that you got into politics, too. You were a village trustee for 23 years.
I was on Akron School Board for 11 years, and then Erie One BOCES for 14 years. Part of that overlapped. So I had 25 years of school board experience, and then I ran for the village board. And that was in 1997, and here we are. I'm in my 23rd year.
My goodness. What's the biggest difference that you think between serving on a school board and serving on a village board?
You get a lot of parental complaints about disciplinary things when you're on school board. Their child, the student, misbehaved in this way or that way, or they perceive that they didn't get whatever fair shake. And a lot of that comes to the school board, or at least it used to. It's been a number of years since I haven't been on. But and those kind of things you don't get at village board. You get homeowner type issues that they bring up. And some of those you can address, and some of them are infrastructure related, so you got to put them in the queue of when you can get to them. But the school board is much more related to just discipline and curriculum and that stuff.
Though with both you're dealing with complex budgets.
Oh, for sure. School budget is way more set, though, because so much of it is contractual. You've got debt service, and you've got salaries and wages and benefits, and that stuff just keeps rolling year after year after year, and so there isn't a lot of discretion that you have with any of that. And as always, here's a similarity, that it's always tough to have enough money to maintain the infrastructure. Always. But in school, you have the issue of you get better state aid if you do infrastructure repairs and improvements in big projects, because the state aid is better. And the reimbursement is better when you do them in large capital projects. And we don't have that issue at the village. So it's more of a steady as she goes instead of big lump sums.
I would imagine with the village it's much more of a political animal.
Not political as in political parties, the national parties, so much, because we're all members of the same community. But it is political in the sense that you have to get stuff done and you want to serve your constituents.
Well, apparently you've done a good job because you've been reelected.
Well, I have been. I've been fortunate to have been reelected. Now, truth be told, there aren't a lot of people clamoring to serve on village board because the pay is not very high, and
do you think that?
But you do it out of service. You don't do it for the money, for sure, because you'd be at $2 an hour or something. It's
Do you find, or do you fear that public service is becoming more difficult to find people to serve in?
Oh, absolutely. There are in small communities that's the case. I don't know when you get to larger communities. I think there's enough population draw that you get people that aspire. And of course the behavior of folks at the state and federal level doesn't give politics a good name.
No,
and that's lamentable. Somewhere along the lines, a lot of those folks have forgotten that you should be nice to people that you're working with.
Yeah. Do you have a family history of a particular political affiliation?
Yes, Republican.
So your family going back to your father and beyond?
And my grandparents, yes.
Is there a reason for that? Is there a particular president that they associated with?
Not that I know of.
Uh-huh.
Not that I know. I know my mother liked JFK. Everybody did.
Yeah, it seems like
he was a charismatic guy.
Yeah. Not a Republican, though.
No, but the school board, there's some family history on school board. My grandfather was on the school board for 20 years, and my father was on Akron's school board for 21, and then on Erie One Bosse's for 15.
So there's quite the family history.
Yeah, we had 81 years between the three of us.
Oh, my goodness. That's really impressive.
And so I actually succeeded him on the Erie One Bosse's board. When he retired, I took that seat and ran with it another 14 years.
Well, that's wonderful. That's good for the community. So I understand that when you were with the Rotary, you won a Paul Harris Fellowship. Tell me about that.
That's Rotary's highest achievement award.
Nice.
And it's named after Paul Harris, who's the fellow that founded Rotary International in 1905 in Chicago, or Evanston, I think, actually. Mm-hmm. But anyway, and they award one or two or none of those fellowships awards annually. And so for some of the projects that we've been involved in, they selected me one year. So it was quite flattering.
Yeah, that's very nice. And in 2018, you were the Clarence Citizen of the Year.
That was kind of related to, or coincidentally, timing-wise, related to my retirement from daily operations at the bank. And then that was a very nice gesture on their part. We'd built 2 branches in their community.
I see.
And gotten to know a lot of those folks and had great interactions with people, businesses, and civic leaders in the community. And that's how it came out.
That's very nice.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
That was a nice thing on their part.
Now let's talk about a little bit of your family history. So do you have an extensive genealogy on your family? Do you know the origins of your family, perhaps in Europe or some other place?
The Forrestals came from Ireland in the potato famine in the 1840s, the late 1840s, settled in Buffalo, and the individuals, the first people that came, we know where the gravestones are, in Buffalo, and that was my grandfather's father came as a youngster, Richard R. Forrestal.
Traveled with his parents here.
Traveled with his parents, settled in Buffalo, is buried in the cemetery in Lackawanna by the Basilica.
All right.
And maybe that's called South Buffalo, whatever. And then my grandfather grew up on South Division Street in Buffalo. The house is no longer standing. Mm-hmm. And then when he graduated from high school and then went on to college, founded Cold Spring Construction in 1911. And it was here in Akron that he was working. And it was then, after Grandma graduated from Michigan in 13, he met her sometime after that.
I see. So this would not have been...
And she lived in Akron since the age of 4.
Okay.
She was born in 1892, and in 1896, her father had died, and her mother built a house on Clinton Street, which still stands. And she was living there. That's where she grew up, and so she graduated from school in Akron.
That's a pretty long history in Western New York, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So, with the coming of World War I, did you have any members of your family involved in that?
No, Grandpa was too old.
Okay.
My mother's father served in World War I.
I see. Did he leave the States?
I don't know the details of his service, but I have his dress. He was in the Marines. I have his dress sword.
Do you really?
With his name engraved on it.
That is so wonderful.
Silver-plated sword.
So he was an officer.
Yes.
Nice.
I don't have any details beyond that.
Oh, that's all right, but that's a nice artifact for the family.
And they were from the Royal Oak, Lapeer and Royal Oak, Michigan, depending on the time frame.
Oh, all right. Well, you got some family history with Michigan as well as college in Michigan.
Both my mothers. Well, my mother grew up in Michigan, and that's where she met my father.
Okay. All right.
And her mother was of the Finnish origin, and the Finns came over and worked in the mines in Upper Michigan.
Oh, I see.
That was why they emigrated.
All right.
Because there were jobs in mining.
In mining. Yes, I have grandparents.
That last name is Haka, H-A-K-A.
H-A-K-A. All right.
So I'm quarter Finnish.
All right. Well, it's good to know where you've come from.
Well, I no reason not to. Yeah, it's fun. It's interesting to just think about all the trials and tribulations people have been through to get where they are.
That's right. I think it's an important thing for you to pass down to the next generation. Where you've come from and what your ancestors have gone through to bring you here into the world.
And I'm interested. You see somebody and you're interested in where'd you come from.
Right.
And some people nowadays, they get so politically correct, they think that it's an insult to ask somebody where they're from. I'm curious. I think it's cool.
I think it's cool.
And you're hopeful that they know and have an appreciation of what their ancestors went through to get wherever it is they are.
Right. Well, besides that, you hope that there's a transmission of culture that
absolutely
between the generations. Whether it is, a grandparent spoke a language from abroad that they brought with them to the States. And it helps to explain a lot, I think, about the way that we construct our families and the way that we live our lives.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, of course, bring traditions from the old country, and they hold on to those traditions the rest of their lives, and their grandchildren have no idea why that tradition exists.
We were fortunate when our kids were in high school. We hosted 4 exchange students.
Oh, really?
One for a full year from the Czech Republic, whose wife, coincidentally, had their third daughter, this morning.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So that's cool. And we've stayed in touch and been over to visit 3 times, and he's been back to visit several times.
To the Czech Republic.
Yep. And so that's given us an opportunity to tour that area of Europe quite a bit by car.
That must be fascinating.
That's been fun. That's been really rewarding. And we had a 2-month student from Peru, a girl, and we had a 3-month girl from Australia through Rotary, and we also had a boy from Rotary from Mexico. No, wrong, from Spain.
From Spain.
Wow.
Now, see, that would be a wonderful thing for your children to be exposed to.
Oh, I highly recommend it.
Different influences and cultures.
The kids learn so much. And especially if you get a chance to go over and visit their home country. That's been really rewarding.
I imagine it would be. That is so cool. So tell me a little bit about the stories from your father. I understand that you have some good stories to tell about him.
Well, my father, Richard, a.k.a. Dick, a.k.a. most of his adult life, Ref, as his initials, Richard E. Forrestal.
Okay.
But everyone in town called him Ref, and that got started because when we started working highway construction, Dad was there. Well, you don't want to call him Dad. That's, wimpy to call him Dad. So we started calling him by his initials, and all the construction workers, everybody did that.
That's interesting.
My uncle, his brother, was JT, and Dad was Ref, and that's just how it was the whole rest of his life, including his license plate.
All right.
For the last 50 years of his, not quite 50, 40 years of his life. But he grew up here in Akron at 39 Bloomingdale, which is the house that People Inc. has now. And then when he, back from college and got married, then Mom and Dad moved into the house at 28 Bloomingdale. And they had such a large brood, had to expand the house twice. Added on in 59 and then another addition in 1960. I remember those because I was a little kid.
Right.
And Mom, as I said, had 11 kids. And when she was in her 40s, then went back to school and got an ed degree to teach English.
Oh, really?
And she graduated in 1970, got her master's. When she had my youngest brother Tom as an infant in her arms in her graduation photo.
Oh, really?
She was 43 when she had Tom, the 11th child. The first 10 were in 12 years, but then there was an 8-year gap, and then Tom came along.
All right.
I was a senior in high school.
I see.
So that was a little weird. You're a senior in high school, and I had 2 siblings older than me. Anyway, my mom's English teacher corrected my grammar.
That'll do it.
Oh, she knew every single piece of grammar rules, knew all the spelling, knew all the words, and all their meanings. She had 100% mastery of the English language, everything.
Wow.
And she never passed up an opportunity to correct somebody.
Okay.
Lie, lay, and lane and all that. And all the way until she passed at age 86. It was unbelievable. She'd correct everybody. She didn't care. She loved proofreading. So do I. I think it's fun. And she was an English teacher and public speaking at Alden School for about 10 or 15 years after she had Brother Tom.
Oh, my goodness.
And
so she had quite the career as a mother, and then went on to be a school teacher.
And then in English, she'd done some subbing before, and then taught over at Alden School, and retired from there when a little later in life.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
But she never, and everybody that knew her knows, she never passed up an opportunity to correct somebody's grammar. Pretty funny. And so, okay, back to Dad. So Dad was always away in summers working at wherever the road job was. So a number of summers, almost every summer, we'd rent a cottage to be near wherever the road job was. So Conesus Lake, Chautauqua Lake, Keuka Lake. And so we spent most of our summers at lakes.
Nice.
At little cottages. Some of them weren't too elegant, but nonetheless, we learned to water ski at young ages and ski jump. Dad built a ski jump, and we learned how to ski jump. It's a wonder nobody ever got seriously hurt. And so we did a lot of boating and a lot of fishing and a lot of water skiing and that stuff. We learned to. He loved teaching us stuff, and I learned to scuba dive when I was 8, and we were already water skiing by then. And we snow skied right from the get-go. When we were 6 or 7 or whatever, we started snow skiing, and he'd pile all us kids into the car, and we'd go down to Glenwood Acres.
That must have been a big car.
Ford station wagons, full of kids. And in those days, there were no car seats, so you could cram them all in. There'd be 5 kids in the middle seat, and a few in the back and a few in the front. And we skied just about every Sunday during the winter when the ski slopes were open.
Nice.
So we all learned to ski and scuba dive and snorkeling too, of course, but ski and scuba dive at very young ages.
How wonderful. Kind of a fringe benefit of your father's work.
He skied for over 70 years, 75 years, and he was a pilot for almost 70 years, and it was a scuba diver for over 70 years.
Now he was just a private pilot.
Pilot
of small planes.
Small planes.
That is fascinating. So he flew like Cessnas and things like that.
Yep, Cessnas, and had a pressurized Cessna that could go to 25,000 feet at the tail end of it all, and had a float plane so that he could land on water.
Lake.
And so with that, they had some pretty good fishing adventures going way up north into the lakes in Canada.
Nice. I've never had the pleasure, but I understand it's wonderful.
In his regular plane, he and Roy McCready got to Greenland. They were trying to get over to Iceland and didn't realize that you had to have a visa to get into Greenland.
Oh.
Well, it's 500 miles from Nova Scotia. No, wrong. From Newfoundland, the east side of Newfoundland, to Greenland. Well, the Greenland folks were not happy when they showed up having not requested permission to come. They were very unhappy, but they couldn't just turn around and go back. There's not enough fuel for that, and at the time of day, they had to stay overnight. Well, the customs people were just not happy.
That sounds like a great adventure.
It was a great adventure, but they just kind of blew it on the paperwork.
Oh, boy.
And he flew to the Cayman Islands a bunch of times because he had a condo there. My folks did for 35 years.
Oh, really?
Now one of my brothers owns it.
I see.
Since my parents have
In
passed.
the Cayman Islands.
Yep. Way early. We went there in the 70s, but then in the early 80s, he bought a condo as a condo complex was being built.
I understand that those islands have changed quite a bit, though, in the past.
Oh, they've developed a ton.
Yeah.
Pretty hectic now. It's not a place where you want to go and try and do a lot of driving around because the traffic, just because the number of people that are there.
Yeah.
But it's a gorgeous spot. The beach is awesome, and the scuba diving and snorkeling are awesome. So if those are the things you like, it's a great place to go.
And you don't need a visa.
Absolutely beautiful. No visa, it's easy.
That is so cool. Do you want to tell me about these pictures that you brought in with you?
Well, speaking of the Cayman Islands, one of the things that we were fortunate enough to do was have a number of the 3 pictures that I brought today. I have one of a assemblage of my relatives, meaning siblings and spouses, at one of our reunions that we held on Grand Cayman Island. And we did that for Dad's 65th. Then Mom was 2 years younger, then her 65th, and then his 70th, and then hers, and so on. So for their milestone birthdays, we'd have family reunions in the Cayman Islands. And at the largest number, we had 50 of us.
Oh, my. That's quite the crew to get over there.
Kids and grandkids, and Dad took care of the accommodations. All we had to do was get there. It was awesome. And we'd be there for a week and have a good time, and it was really made great family memories.
I'll bet. One of the photos you have must be of your parents.
That's my grandparents, my dad's parents.
All right.
On there.
And what are their names?
Eugene, Peter. I'm named after Grandpa. That's why I'm the second.
I see.
And his wife, Fiona, who's the one who grew up as a little girl on Clinton Street here in Akron.
Very nice. And
then the third picture that I have is from one of Dad's scuba diving trips. He did a number of trips around the world, scuba diving trips, and he met a lady named Kathy Church, who was the woman that pioneered underwater photography.
Oh, really?
And they were age compatriots, and both active diving way into their 80s. And so we went on a number of trips with her to the Red Sea, for example, and to Papua New Guinea, and to Truk Lagoon, which is where the U.S. sunk the Japanese fleet in the Pacific. Anyway, that one picture is from Papua New Guinea, which until 20 years before that had been cannibals and really kind of a crummy place. But anyway, the picture is of Dad with a number of natives, and they have these big mud masks on, and they're all covered like they rolled in mud, like a mud wrestling thing. But they have these big clay masks that go all the way down to their shoulders, cover their whole head, front and back. And that's from a time when, back in their history, one tribal group was attacking another, and they put these grotesque masks on and ran out and screamed and scared the other ones to get them to leave them alone.
Isn't that
and
interesting?
So that's become an oral tradition history thing in that culture. And they had a presentation, as a day trip during one of these scuba diving trips. And so Dad went to that, and they're posing, and he looks like he's in his 60s at the time.
He's the tall man with the sunglasses.
Yep, and he's posing with those other strange-looking creatures.
All of these photos will be available in the digital scrapbook that accompanies the podcast, so you'll be able to enjoy these, and we'll make sure that they're labeled appropriately. Well, thank you so much, Peter, for coming on today. It was wonderful to talk to you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for listening in, and remember to tune in to the next episode of Remembering Akron.